All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College. And as part of the Rankin Technical College AWD 1000 Web Development Technologies course, I've been going through a series of video presentations based on the Learn Web Development Getting Started with the Web from Mozilla Developer Network. So, I've been doing this. So far I've gone through the Getting Started with the Web overview, the installing basic software, what will the website look like, dealing with files, HTML basics, CSS basics, JavaScript basics, and I just finished publishing your website. So we're up to how the web works. Next, we're going to start breaking this down, and you'll notice there's a lot in here on the intro to HTML, multimedia and embedding, and tables. All right, so what I have done is I've got this I Love Missouri thing that I've created, and it's not a piece of junk, but it's not too much in here right now. I'm going to try to fix it up, make it look a lot nicer, more professional, more like a quote real website, unquote, that you'd see. All right, and I'm going to try to do that in this series in here. All right, and I guess in here as well. All right, and we'll try to make it accessible, and then we'll look at that'll be pretty much it for that. But then we'll look at this tools and testing. So we'll come in here, and then we'll look at the server side stuff, and that'll pretty much be it for what's in here. All right, so how the web works, as it says, provides a simplified view of what happens when you view a web page in a web browser on your computer, phone, tablet, whatever you're using. All right. So it says this theory is not essential to writing web code in the short term, but having an understanding of what's going on will really help you to see what exactly is going on. So where it says client here, that's you. Doesn't matter if it's your phone, if it's a computer, if it's a tablet, or whatever it is. So for instance, I come in here and I go in, and from right here, I come in and I type in rankin.edu. That's me at my client machine, and I am asked for the home page, or I've asked to go to Rankin Technical College's website. And boom, I'm there. So I made what was called a HTTP, or a hypertext transfer protocol request to the server. The server answered with an HTTP, a hypertext transfer protocol response. All right, as it says there, clients typically are internet-connected devices, and servers are computers that store web pages, websites, apps, whatever it is you need. So you make a request, it goes out to a server, and that server may have to call other servers to get whatever it is you want. So for instance, if I go out to Amazon.com and I say I want all books on HTML, it's probably not going to be on the server that gets my request. It'll probably have to go out and call another server to get that information. All right. So the other parts, as it says here, the client and server don't tell the whole story. There are many other parts involved. It says, for now, let's imagine that the web is a road. On one end of the road is the client, which is like your house, and on the other end of the road is the server, which they're likening to a shop where you want to go out and buy things. So, it says, in addition to the client and the server, we also need to say hello to your internet connection. As it says, your internet connection allows you to send and receive data on the web. It says basically it's the street between your house and the shop you want to get to. Next is TCP IP, another acronym which stands for Transmission Control Protocol and Internet Protocol. It defines the data, how the data should travel across the internet. Now, IP, every computer has a unique IP, or Internet Protocol address. All right. And they're likening it here as to how are you going to get from point A to point B. Are you going to take your own car, your own bike, etc.? But it's something unique. So really all devices have their own unique IP address. Then you've got DNS, a domain name server. Now, even though we typed in rankin.edu, that's not actually, that server really listens to a series usually of 4 numbers. For instance, my machine right here can be referred to as my machine or 127.0.0.1, which is also means the local machine. The reason I'm telling you this is the next component that's shown there is DNS. Now, I'm not a hardware guy. I don't profess to be. In fact, I profess not to be. But a DNS, as it says there, is a domain name server. It says it's like an address book. So in other words, what they're saying is what a DNS does is it takes me typing in rankin.edu and it converts it over to that series of numbers like 111-33-66 or whatever -44 that the computer can understand the actual IP address of the server itself. So the browser, as it says, looks at the DNS to find the website's real address, its real IP address, before it can retrieve the website. It needs to find out which server the site lives on so it can send HTTP requests to the right place. It says this is like looking up the address of the shop so you can access it. HTTP, as I've already mentioned, is Hypertext Transfer Protocol. And as mentioned, it defines a language for clients and servers that can be used to speak to one another. It says this is the language you use to order your goods. It's the language you use so that your individual machine can communicate, so to speak, with a website. A website is made up of a lot of different kinds of files that they're calling here component files. It says there's 2 main types. There's code files, which are what we've been kind of talking about so far, and there's assets, things like images, music, Word documents, PDFs, etc. So it says here what happens exactly. This is kind of what I've been explaining to you so far, but I'm going to keep saying it. When you type a web address into your browser, the browser goes to the DNS server and finds the actual address of the server the site lives on. Then the browser sends an HTTP request to the server. It asks for a copy of the website so it can be sent to the client so the client can actually utilize the website. This message, as it says, and all other data is sent across the internet connection using this TCP IP. Third, if the server approves the client's request, it sends an OK message, which is a level 200 message, which means, yeah, here it is. I'm going to send it back to you. For instance, if I put in a bad name, so you saw before when I put in Rankin, but what if I spell Rankin wrong? What if I type in RINKEN.edu, Rinken.edu? It comes back and it says the site cannot be reached. Notice what it says here. The server's IP address could not be found. So it looked, and using DNS, it tried to convert that into a series of numbers that represented some server, and it couldn't find it. All right, so rather than sending back a 200 message, probably was sending more like a 404 message, which means a file not found. Finally, number 4, it says there, the browser assembles the small chunks into a complete web page. Well, all this stuff is happening over the internet, over the wire, as they say. And there's only so much that can be sent at any one time. So typically what happens is what you want to have sent gets broken up. Typically it actually is referred to as chunking and unchunking. So it gets broken up into chunks, sent over the wire, and then those chunks get reassembled and displayed to you. So, order in which the component files are parsed. It says once the client's request is approved, the server first sends back the HTML. The HTML can reference CSS, which you've already seen, JavaScript, which you've already seen. All right. And these can be inside of the file itself, like we saw when we put in internal or inline CSS and we used internal JavaScript, or it can be external files. It says from a server standpoint, it is important to know the order in which these files are parsed. So the HTML file, as it says, is parsed first. And by looking inside that file, the server recognizes and it says, oh, we also need this CSS file or files, this JavaScript file or files. So after the HTML has been parsed, it builds what's called a document object model or a DOM tree. All right, then the CSS is parsed and the styles in that particular file are applied appropriately. And then finally, the JavaScript gets parsed and it gets applied to the page as needed. Now, you've got to realize, for example, at Rankin, we've got a whole course. I shouldn't even say a whole course. You've got a whole program that delves into the hardware side of this. So for it to say DNS explained right here, they're giving you 3 paragraphs for something that you'd spend a lot more time with in an actual classroom. So real web addresses aren't the nice, memorable strings like rankin.edu. Rather, as it says, it's special numbers that look like this. Let's see, just for the heck of it, if we put in those numbers, do we get anything? It's thinking about it. I don't know if it'll give us this IP address of Google. Says we can use 8.8.8.8. This didn't give us anything. Will this? I'll let that spin for a bit and see if that gives us anything. But it says there that something like this, or like what we just put in, 8.8.8.8, is called an IP address. As it says, each machine has its own unique, well, can't reach that either, so that's okay. As it says, it represents a unique location on the web. Since that set of numbers is not easy to understand, and where something like google.com or rankin.edu is easier to understand, that's where the domain name servers come in. They're servers that allow this transformation to take place from the actual words and letters that you put in representing the website to the series of digits which represent the actual Internet Protocol or IP address. Okay. All right. It says earlier we used the term packets to describe the format in which data is sent from server to client. It says what do we mean here? Basically, when data is sent across the web, it is sent as thousands of small chunks so that very many different users can download the same website at the same time. If websites were sent as single big chunks, only one user could download at a time. Now, if you want more, as always, they give you some more in here. And the other thing I just wanted to mention on this now is, again, you've heard this already. When I come back again, we're going to jump into the next part of this. So we've now pretty much finished this part. And we're going to go into HTML structuring the web. All right, so we're going to go through there, and you'll notice it's broken up into 3 modules. Introduction to HTML, which has got a bunch of component pages in it. Multimedia and embedding, which again has a bunch of its own sections or pages in it. And HTML tables, which is kind of interesting because tables aren't used as much anymore as they used to be used. No slam on tables, all right? And so when I come back again, we're going to go into this and we're going to break it up into these three different things. And I'm going to sandwich around doing that, building an actual website for you, which will start out looking not much prettier, unfortunately, than it does now, but hopefully it'll get into something that looks quite manageable. All right, so that's pretty much what I have. So I have now gone through again the getting started. We have gone through all these lessons. And when I come back again, I'm going to jump into the HTML, and I'll see you soon.